A big benefit that we've seen for a lot of our members and others who've gone through this is the ability to get off some of those medications that they were maybe taking metformin and they're taking some other medication to suppress their blood sugar. And the good news is that, type 2 diabetes, it's generally thought of as a progressive disease. You get on these medications and then they start taking insulin and then eventually you have amputations and things like that. It's just like you go blind. It doesn't have to be that way. That through some of these lifestyle changes that are really actually reasonably pleasant and gives you a strong feeling of being more in control can be really a real positive thing for people. Hey, welcome to Take Charge with Healthcare. I'm your host, Lee Aase, with my co-host, Dan Hinmon, and this time we're focusing on fasting. Often we'll have a guest and we'll talk about something more related to the business of healthcare, sometimes insurance or what it's like to work in the healthcare clinic practice. In this episode, we're going to go back a little bit more to our roots in terms of what we're all about as a healthcare organization and kind of our basic posture and approach toward helping people take charge of their health.
Yeah. I'm delighted to be here today with you, Lee. And this is a topic that I personally love and have tried in my own life. And I'm really interested in hearing a little bit more about what you're experiencing right now and why. Also, I've got a little different background today on this podcast. So one of the great things about podcasts is you can do it from anywhere. So here I am in the basement of a friend's house here in Utah while we
Yeah,
travel
it's pretty
with friends.
fantastic.
So it's
Yeah.
nice to be able to connect from kind of anywhere in the world when we do these things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So why don't we kick it off, Lee, by just kind of tell us a little bit about your own journey with this. Like what introduced you to even the concept of fasting? What does that have to do with health? How did you get
Sure.
started on this?
Yeah, well, everybody's heard of fasting, but from a health perspective, I think a real game changer for me is a book that's just over my shoulder here called The Obesity Code, which is the world's worst title for a book, because if you read it and you like it, you can't give it to a friend and say, here, I think you should read this book called The Obesity Code. But
Because you are so obese, we think.
right, exactly. It's like, what are you telling me? Anyway, I read that book, I believe it was around 2019, and it's by Dr. Jason Fung, who's an endocrinologist, or actually a nephrologist. He is a kidney doctor. And I saw it recommended, and I was reading through, and I read through the first 18 chapters maybe, and it talked about how it's impossible to lose weight, how your body fights to maintain its set point, and just why sort of the standard approaches of eat less, move more, just end up giving people frustration. And just when I was about at the point to say, well, I guess it just can't work. I guess there's nothing I can do. He talked about fasting. He talked about how it is, part of every world religion. Do you think if you go for a period of time without eating, you might lose some weight? It's like, and it does actually kind of relate to the calories in, calories out a little bit, in the sense as if you are having some time when you're not eating, if you fast for an extended period of time, you're not going to eat as much in a given day. It's just going to naturally have some trend toward that. And it really resonated with me because I remember back in the 1970s, because yes, I am old enough to remember back in the 1970s, 50 years ago, the beach pictures looked a lot different. And also the eating patterns were a lot different. It used to be that when you'd come home from school and you ask Mom, can I have a snack? And she'd say, no, you'll spoil your supper. And then afterwards, in the evening, if I would say, Mom, can I have a bedtime snack? And she'd say, well, no, you should have eaten your supper. So naturally, there was about this 12-hour period typically in most people's lives when they weren't eating. And that was just kind of the way the lifestyle was. Of course, our lives are a lot different now. And anyway, Dr. Jason Fung was the one who really introduced me to this.
So that you're talking about kind of time-limited fasting there, as you make this point of people are naturally going 12 hours without eating. So how does he apply that to today?
Yeah, well, I think a big part of it is that, the word breakfast is break fast. Okay, so you break your fast whenever you eat your first meal of the day. after evening meal. And so, the science behind it, as he described it, is that, insulin is a fat storage hormone. It's a growth and fat storage hormone. And so when you eat, especially high carbohydrates, but carbohydrates and even protein, your body produces insulin to get that blood sugar down to a level that's healthy. I mean, it fights to get it under that. And as long as those insulin levels are high, you can't burn fat. You're either burning your carbohydrates and burning blood sugar, or you're switching over to your flex fuel, which is fat, okay, which is stored and which you're carrying around with you. And so part of the problem is that when you're eating 5 or 6 meals a day, especially with the young kids, they got to have a snack at halftime of the soccer game or whatever too, that continually that insulin level is higher, and that insulin just doesn't allow fat to be burned. Fat is wonderful. It's given to us as a gift to enable us to, when we were, in the hunter-gatherer times, when our ancestors would find some food, they never knew when they would necessarily have the next meal. And so having the ability to store that energy to be able to continue to go out and forage and do whatever they needed to do to get food was what kept them alive, and so now it's just the problem is that food's sort of constantly available. And so we're sort of habitually in this process of adding on and never burning off the log pile.
So what did you start with after you read the book and started thinking, I'm going to apply this to myself? What did you start doing differently?
Well, my wife, Lisa, and I, so first starting just doing the 12-hour fast, just saying, okay, I'm not eating after supper. Okay, and we call it supper here in our part of the state instead of dinner. But after the evening meal, just not eating. But then one of the things he talked about in the book was an alternate day fast, where you would eat breakfast, lunch, and supper or dinner one day. The next day, you don't eat again until the evening meal. You're eating every day. You're eating at least one meal every day. But one day you eat regularly, and then the next day you just skip breakfast and lunch and have the evening meal. My wife, Lisa, and I did that for 10 weeks. And this was something where she'd been having difficulty, losing weight, women and hormones and kind of that, especially, postmenopausal, where she had struggled to lose 3 pounds maybe in 3 months before. She lost 12 or 13 pounds and I lost about 15. And this was after I had, yeah, with just
in 10 weeks.
Just in 10 weeks, yeah. So it was about a pound and a half a week, which is a super sustainable way to do it. The yo-yo dieting that people do and going up and down and all that, this is much more of a steady, sustainable progress. And, if you were to continue that over a year, it's losing about 50 pounds, which is kind of about what happened. And so there are different flavors of intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating. There's, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. And then, like if you're on one of those alternate day fasts like we were talking about, it'd be, you'd eat the evening meal and it might be on one day and it might be 24 hours until you eat the next meal. But then the next day you're doing, a 12-hour, essentially just a 12-hour fast. Actually, I think part of the benefit of that is keeping your body guessing, because part of the problem with some of the dieting strategies is that your body just gets into a rut where it says, okay, well, I got to lower my metabolism because I'm starving here, so you just have to kind of change it up, I think, a little bit.
When you're not eating, what is it okay to do on this kind of fast, like water or coffee, or what are some of the things you do when you're not eating?
Yeah, typically it's going to be black coffee or water. Sometimes when, in a little bit more extended fast, just having a little salt water. And one of the things I like to do for that is Element electrolyte packets, which has sodium and potassium and magnesium. And so one of the things that'll happen especially in a more extended fast, and we will get to that in a little bit, is that when you do an extended fast, you tend to excrete more liquid, more water. And a lot of the weight that you lose in the early days of a fast will be water weight, because the glycogen that's in your cells has been burned out, and that's been suspended in water. It's been dissolved in water, and so the water gets excreted. But along with that, sometimes you lose the electrolytes. Well, not sometimes, you always lose the electrolytes. And so that's one of the things when you may think you're hungry, but you're really actually just electrolyte deplenished. But yeah, the A lot of people will do just skip breakfast, skip the morning meal and instead eat dinner, lunch and supper. That, having a 6 or 8 hour eating window and then 16 to 18 hours of
Right.
fasting, that gives your body enough time to get into burning off some of the fat and using that as your fuel.
So before we get too much deeper into this, should you be consulting your healthcare provider as you initiate these kinds of fasting, or what's your advice there?
So I think it's always good to consult your healthcare provider, particularly if you're currently on diabetic medication. Starting with a 12-hour fast, you're not going to kill yourself. you know, or even a 16 or 18-hour fast. A lot of times people feel like I'm going to just shrivel up and blow away. It's something that people have done for literally thousands of years. Okay. And so if you are on a medication that's purposefully lowering your blood sugar, then it'd be good to have a conversation about it. And that's where it's great with what we have with Healthcare Clinic is that, we're not a weight loss clinic, but we do provide people guidance in ways that they can use things like dietary interventions, things like fasting to help take charge of their health and really improve their health.
So do you continue to do some kind of fasting in day to day? Like, are you on an intermittent fasting protocol, or what do you do
Yeah.
just ongoing in your life?
Yeah, on a regular basis, I'm typically maybe eating one meal a day, sometimes two. Typically, I may just eat the evening meal and then have black coffee in the morning, or sometimes I'll have coffee with heavy whipping cream because that's going to be predominantly fat as the flavoring. And so you kind of switch in between burning the fat that you're carrying and burning a little bit of the fat that you take in. Now, there is some milk sugar in that as well, and so you are raising your insulin a little bit. So when I'm in a period that I really want to make sure that I stay in that fat burning mode, then I go with just the black coffee and with the
Yeah.
electrolyte water sometimes.
But aren't you hungry in between? Like, if you're having one meal a day, aren't
hmm
you dealing with hunger a lot of the time?
I really am not. Like I just got to tell you, it's something that takes some getting used to. But part of it is because our bodies have been in this carb cycle, this blood sugar spikes and crashes because of the way we ordinarily eat. And because of that, then you're just famished. And so that's what I would suggest is if you're typically on a higher fat, lower carbohydrate diet with adequate protein, then you don't have some of these fluctuations and you just, it's hunger doesn't grow and build and build and build and build until it's intolerable. It comes in waves. And so often what I'd suggest for folks is if you got a watch, set a 30-minute timer. Like when you're feeling hungry, set a 30-minute timer, have a glass of cold water or maybe some electrolyte water. And then when the alarm goes off, am I still hungry? And often you're not, and so it does kind of spur you on it helps you focus in your work even sometimes, I think. It's sort of a motivation factor, I think, too.
Yeah. So let's talk about that whole idea as well. Why do it? I mean, we've talked about weight loss being a benefit, right?
hmm
But are there other health benefits or mental health benefits associated with it?
Yeah, I think what a lot of people will find is, when you don't burn carbohydrates, when you're not in fat burning mode, you're creating ketones. And that's where you hear keto is the buzzword, or ketosis as people talk about that. That's just the fuel factor that starts, going through your blood, circulating through your bloodstream when you don't have higher blood sugar, when you don't have high insulin levels. So that's just an alternate fuel. It's like the flex fuel that we talked about. It's like we are hybrid vehicles. We have the ability to use both kinds of fuel. And I think what a lot of people experience is stronger mental clarity when they're operating in the fat burning mode. The ketogenic diet has been used to prevent seizures. Before there were any medications, a very high fat ketogenic diet was the only thing that would help, people with epilepsy seizures. There's been a lot. There's another book that I have here on my shelf by Dr. Chris Palmer who's a Harvard psychiatrist. Now, he's not saying don't take other medications that are related to mental health issues, but for things like even schizophrenia and even bipolar disorder and other things like that, for a lot of mental health issues, a ketogenic diet can play a role. It definitely can. And the other part is that they call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. Okay, that's another name for it. And so part of that is that, over time, and backing up a little bit, you develop insulin resistance when your insulin levels are high for a long period of time. It takes more and more insulin to accomplish the goal, and your cells become resistant to the effects of insulin. And then eventually get to a point where they say, oh, you've got type 2 diabetes or you've got pre-diabetes. Well, your brain cells also become insulin resistant. Okay, and one of the hypotheses is that Alzheimer's is an energy issue with your brain. And that's one of the strains of it anyway, is that when your brain doesn't have fuel, that tends to show up in some of these symptoms that people see, in Alzheimer's and other kinds of dementia. And so by having your brain be able to use ketones instead, they're definitely seeing in not only Alzheimer's, not only epilepsy, but in some of these other mental health issues, seeing improvements. And just on I guess what you'd call a subclinical level, just in regular ordinary day life for ordinary people that aren't afflicted by some of these other issues, that's where people report, and I can report that as well, that I can definitely feel more focused when I'm fasting, that I have more brain clarity.
Yes.
One of the great things is just the energy, the increased focus and energy that you have. And besides that, when you're not eating, you get some extra time because you're not worrying and you're not thinking about what am I going to eat next or what am I going to go do. It's just you can kind of keep focused and work through lunch or what would be lunch and get more done.
So some of the benefits are the weight loss, of course, some mental clarity, some time back from not having to eat or prepare or think that much about it, and then some general overall health things, because it just is good for your body to have that break from eating from time to time. Is this kind of what we're saying?
Yeah, resting your digestive system. If your digestive system is always on and you're always, continually feeding things through, we naturally are designed to be able to just have that downtime. And if it's kind of like if you keep the engine running all the time and never give it a break, it's going to overheat. The other thing I'd say is, the weight loss is obviously a thing. Like that's something that's an issue in our country, and it's an issue kind of in the developed world. But it's mainly about getting your metabolism fixed. And then the weight loss is that side effect. That if they start fasting, before they've really seen appreciable weight loss happen, they're already getting their insulin levels down. They're getting better at processing fuel. And that's going to be something that's going to pay off in overall health significantly.
Good. It's good. Thanks for explaining all of that, Lee. So we've talked about the one idea of alternate day fasting. We've talked about intermittent fasting, where you might eat for 8 hours or 6 hours or 4 hours in a day. We've talked about maybe one meal a day, which you do sometimes. Now, there also are times when you and others have gone on extended fasts. And so I think you're in the middle of one of those right now. So tell us what you're doing as far as an extended fast and why this would be a good idea.
Sure. Well, right now I'm at about the 20-hour mark of what's going to be a 72-hour fast, a 3-day fast. I try to do these at least once a quarter, every 2 or 3 months, and it's got a lot of important health benefits in terms of just kind of resetting your system, both longevity in general, but also in cancer prevention. That we definitely see there's some good science that would suggest that it could be significantly helpful for that. And the explanation I use for that is that cancer cells are defined by kind of unrestrained, unlimited growth. They don't quit, they just proliferate throughout the body. Cancer cells are defective in that they can only use, for a lot of them, they can only use glucose. they're part of the nature of the cancer is that the mitochondria, which are the power plants in the cell, are defective. And so they're only able to use glucose and not ketones. That that explains why the PET scan works. What they do in that is they'll inject some radioactive tracer marked glucose into your veins, wait about 30 minutes, and then 20 or 30 minutes, and then they take a scan. And your brain lights up because your brain uses 20% of all your body's energy, which kind of relates to that Alzheimer's thing that we were talking about. But the other things that light up are tumors. Cancer cells just have a ravenous appetite for sugar. And so the theory behind this, and Dr. Thomas Seyfried out at Boston College, I believe, he's a PhD, he's not a physician, but he's a PhD researcher, has done a lot of work on this, that by going ketogenic and then fasting, along with doing things like hyperbaric oxygen treatment and things like that, that you can actually sort of starve the cancer cells. You can weaken them. When you're high in ketones, lower in blood sugar, your normal cells do fine, but the cancer cells, which we all carry kind of at all times, and our immune system just normally kills them, that though before they proliferate, it actually restores the balance. It pushes the equilibrium back to where the immune system's able to deal with some of them. So I don't know if it's 100% going to work, but what I can tell you is that it's way better than chemotherapy in terms of as something that you would want to do every 2 or 3 months or so. There's a plausible theory behind it that it would that would make sense that you're going to be weakening the cancer cells. You're going to cause them to not be able to proliferate. You strengthen your immune system. And that's the other related part that we do know, is that there's this concept called autophagy. So autophagy is phagy is eating, self-eating, that when you get into 2 or 3 days of a fast, your body flips over and kind of goes from the growth and multiplication to the repair mode. So in each of our cells, there are defective organelles within the cell, like the mitochondria, some of these others, that when you get into the autophagy stage, the cells start to say, hey, we ought to clean up around here a little bit. Like, let's get rid of these defective ones and let's produce some new ones. And so not sure, kind of the longer you do the fast, the more that autophagy happens. And I've sort of settled on a 3-day as a sweet spot to be, okay, this is jump-starting that process a little bit. I've done some fast. I've done a 4-day fast. I've done a 5-day fast. I kind of have settled on 3 days as what seems like a good amount for that.
So during the fast, is this again a case of water, electrolytes, black coffee? Or those are the things that sort of sustain you. You want to keep hydrated or whatever the key is to that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, definitely. What I'll sometimes even do is shake a little salt into my palm and lick it. Maintaining that salt level is really important. Often I'm doing it dissolved, a little more flavored electrolytes, as I talked before, like with the Element. The black coffee, the main thing is to have extremely low caloric intake. I think these packets have like 5 calories, maybe, something like that.
Yeah.
So there's, the purest way, the ideal way would be to just drink plain water and then just have unflavored salt. But sometimes I will take magnesium supplements too. So I think it's really important as you're doing this to be sure that you're getting enough of those electrolytes.
And how do you feel while you're going through it? Again, kind of back to the hunger thing. Seems like a long time between meals. How do you feel while you're doing it?
Yeah, well, like I said, I use one app that I use for this is called the Zero app, and I'll have a link to this in the show notes. But this is my app called Zero. Shows right now I guess I'm at the 21-hour mark of this, 21 hour to 72, and I have 51 hours to go. Feeling really good right now. So it was about noon yesterday, as we're recording this, that I had my last meal. Had a couple of cheeseburgers without the bun and with bacon on them. And it also is really helpful if you are sort of in ketosis before you go into the fast, because you're already in the fat burning mode. And so Dr. Peter Attia calls it the nothing burger, where you have the bun, in this case is keto and keto on each side. and the middle is nothing. You're eating nothing during the time of fasting. But if you go into it in ketosis and you kind of stay in ketosis afterwards, it prevents, it actually heads off some of the hunger because you're not in that period where we're making the shift from insulin dependent, high carbohydrate into, kind of going cold turkey. So I would recommend going gradually into it through ketosis. I'd also just say that if you're going to do a longer fast like that, you want to be eating smaller meals as you're coming out of it, and also more fat and protein meals versus high carbohydrates. Some of you may remember Karen Carpenter. We've only just begun, and she actually had anorexia, as I understand it. And there is a problem, a thing to be concerned about called refeeding syndrome. That if you go for a really extended period, and I'm talking like 5 or 6 or 7 days, something like that, and then if you eat it really high carb and a lot right away, that can cause some electrical problems, because we talked about the electrolytes. And that's why it's just really important to, when you're doing a longer fast, to be sure to get your electrolytes and then come out of the fast more slowly with smaller meals and not high carb. But again, I'm not a doctor. So it is always really good to talk with your doctor, especially if you're thinking about the longer fasting. Also with HelpCare, we have Jane Connell, who's our registered dietitian, who provides some great coaching on this kind of stuff as well.
That's included in a membership, the coaching campaign?
Yeah, so we have a limited amount of coaching that's included in our membership, and then we also have the HelpCare Challenge, which is our 13-week program. And usually I try to encourage a group fast during that time. And there's one week of the 13 weeks where the focus is on when you eat and not just what you eat, and where we talk about intermittent fasting and other kinds of fasting, including some of these longer ones like what I'm doing right now. And what we do during these we call it a group fast, and we say just fast a little bit more than you had previously. Like whatever your habit has been previously, stretch a little bit more.
So what kind of resources do we have on our website for this?
Well, I encourage people to go and download our free booklet called Help, which is the Health, Energy, and Longevity Plan. That has 10 core strategies that will be helpful for most people in making a difference in their lives. I mean, number one is, be careful what you eat and limit carbohydrates. Number two is that you replace the carbohydrates with healthier fats and adequate protein. So that's number one, number two. And then number 6 is the be careful when you eat, pay attention to when you eat. But getting that booklet, we put that on our website. It's free for anyone. We're delighted to have people, take it and download and use it. And if they never pay us anything and never become a member or whatever, and they get benefit out of it, we'll be delighted, because it's just something we want to kind of spread the word and encourage people to make healthy changes.
So I think kind of in conclusion here then, if someone was new to the concept of fasting and thought, man, I ought to start doing this, what's your advice for how to get started in making this kind of a difference in your life?
Yeah, I think I'd encourage people to start by just not eating after supper, not eating after their evening meal. Just start slowly with that. I used to hear some radio ads where they talked about this miracle supplement that you could take. And what you do is you take a spoonful with your evening meal, and then you don't eat until breakfast the next morning. It's like, the supplement didn't matter. I don't think the supplement probably did anything. It's mainly just not eating until your morning meal. That's a big that's where a big benefit is. So starting with that, and then just kind of stretching it a little bit. Maybe being careful about when you have the morning meal. Maybe instead of the corn checks like I used to have, look at bacon and eggs, because that's going to make you feel fuller throughout the whole day, instead of having the blood sugar crash like I used to get around 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning after my breakfast of cereal. But then just saying, okay, can I push it back a little bit further? Because the longer you stay in that fat burning mode, the more progress you're going to make. And I would say that I would not start with a 3-day fast immediately. I would start with the gradual approach. And again, I would stress, if you're currently on any blood sugar lowering medications, you would want to discuss this with your healthcare practitioner. But a big benefit that we've seen for a lot of our members and others who've gone through this is the ability to get off some of those medications that they were maybe taking metformin and they're taking some other medication to suppress their blood sugar. And the good news is that, type 2 diabetes, it's generally thought of as a progressive disease. You get on these medications and then they start taking insulin and then eventually you have amputations and things like that. It's just like you go blind. It doesn't have to be that way. That through some of these lifestyle changes that are really actually reasonably pleasant and gives you a strong feeling of being more in control can be a real positive thing for people.
Well, good, Lee. Thank you for spending this time today, talking about your journey and some of the options that people have if they want to look at improving their health and how valuable this kind of fasting can be for someone's health. So appreciate
Well, thanks.
this.
And in the show notes, we'll have some other resources as well, perhaps some links to Dr. Seyfried's research and to Jason Fung and some others like that. But we just really encourage people to investigate this for themselves.
Thanks. Yeah, great spending time with you today.
Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a comment or a review and to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on YouTube. And also to share Take Charge with Healthcare with your friends and on your social media channels. At Healthcare, our passion is helping people take charge of their health and their healthcare, helping employers take charge of their health plan expenses, and helping physicians and other practitioners take charge of their healthcare careers. Learn more about the Healthcare Clinic difference at healthcare.health.